It's Monday, September 23rd, 2024. Tim Walz campaigns for Donald Trump, the biggest memory hold story of the year until this weekend, and the most important 2 minutes you'll hear all year. Next on the AM Update. Democrat vice presidential hopeful Tim Walz was in Pennsylvania over the weekend, where he was campaigning, not for his ticket, but for Donald Trump's.
We can't afford 4 more years of this.
Whoops. How do you even say that? How does that get even into the teleprompter for Tim Walz to say he's campaigning for the actual candidate who's been in office for the last 4 years, and he's saying we can't afford 4 more years of this. More on Tim Walz. This is from Alpha News, published late last week, headlined, Walz's former National Guard colleague alleges classified nuclear manual went missing in Nebraska during his tenure. It was September of 1995, and Tim Walz's Nebraska National Guard unit, the 168th Field Artillery, upgraded the M109A5 self-propelled howitzer. One of its capabilities was firing nuclear artillery shells. Alpha News has learned from a former National Guard colleague of Walz that during that time, a classified document allegedly went missing, the Standard Operating Procedure Manual detailing the howitzer's nuclear capabilities. The retired Nebraska National Guard soldier who worked with Walz for 3 years recounted the disappearance in a phone interview with Alpha News. Fearing retaliation, he wished to remain anonymous, but is willing to cooperate with the FBI. According to the retired soldier, Walz had just returned from another trip to China around the time when the manual went missing. He alleges Walz was one of the few with access to the building where the top secret manual was stored and was often the only one there. The former battalion member said he believes Walz stole the nuclear Standard Operating Procedure Manual and later returned it. Alpha News asked why the missing manual was never reported. Former battalion member explained that there was frustration at the time within the unit over Walz double dipping, as he was holding a full-time teaching job while also being expected to serve full-time with the unit. He claims that Walz was frequently neglected in key duties such as recruitment and payroll, which allegedly raised concerns to the point that a superior had to investigate. The former soldier stated that the unit was more focused on those issues, and when the manual eventually reappeared, it went unreported. So, Tim Walz, according to one of Walz's former National Guard colleagues, a manual regarding a howitzer with nuclear capabilities went missing just mysteriously around the same time that Walz made a trip to China. That stinks to high heaven. As a reminder, Joe Biden still is apparently running the country. Here he is over the weekend at some sort of ceremony.
So I want to thank you all for being here. And now, who am I introducing next? Who's next?
Distinguished guests, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India.
That's bad. That's bad. Late last week on Friday, President Biden convened his cabinet for the first time in nearly a year, this time with First Lady Jill Biden joining him for the meeting for some reason. It was the first time the cabinet has met since October 2nd of 2023. Jill Biden spoke about a White House initiative on women's health research before the president fielded a question about the escalating tensions between Israel and Lebanon. First Lady Jill Biden sat at the head of the cabinet table. So, again, apparently Joe Biden's running the country. No, he's not. The Arizona Supreme Court unanimously ruled on Friday that nearly 98,000 people whose citizenship documents hadn't been confirmed can vote in the state and local races. That's a significant decision that could influence ballot measures in tight legislative races. The court's decision comes after officials uncovered a database error that for 2 decades mistakenly designated the voters as having access to the full ballot. The voters already were entitled to cast ballots in federal races, including for president and Congress, regardless of how the court ruled. Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, a Democrat, and Stephen Richer, the Republican Maricopa County recorder, had disagreed on what status the voters should hold. Richard asked the high court to weigh in, saying Fontes ignored state law by advising county officials to let affected voters cast full ballots. To just give you a brief picture of how upside down, at least in Maricopa County, the voting process is there, I have no idea what the story actually means. I have no idea whatsoever. 98,000 people can vote now, a state judge says, in Arizona, with unverified citizenship documents. Unverified citizenship documents. But the court's decision on Friday had no bearing as to whether these nearly 100,000 people were going to be able to vote for president anyway. Something's not right there, obviously. And it's just a small snapshot into how messed up U.S. elections are really, I think, across the rest of the country. It does not invoke confidence for November. So I'd like to submit to you the biggest memory hold story of the year so far. I pride myself on being able to kind of stay on message, stay on point, not forget stories, not just let them go by the wayside for the most part. One story I completely forgot about, and it's been memory hold across the rest of the news media, is this one up until this weekend. There was a barge, an ocean liner, that plowed into the Francis Scott Key Bridge in March of this year. Yes, that was this year. It's shut down one of the major interstate highways on the East Coast. In fact, by some estimates, the busiest ones in terms of trafficking cargo and other important materials. Well, it's back in the news because federal agents on Saturday boarded a vessel managed by the same company as a cargo ship that caused that deadly Baltimore Bridge collapse. In statements, spokespeople for the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Maryland confirmed that authorities boarded the Maersk Saltoro. The ship is managed by Synergy Marine Group. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Criminal Investigation Division, and Coast Guard Investigative Services are present aboard the Maersk Saltoro, conducting court-authorized law enforcement activities. That's according to a statement from the FBI. Authorities didn't offer further specifics. The Washington Post first reported on the federal authorities boarding the ship. The raid came several months after investigators conducted a similar search of the Dolly, the cargo ship that crashed into the bridge. Again, I totally forgot that this story happened. Nobody was asking any questions about what this actually was. How is it possible that a major ocean liner was able to just plow into and completely destroy one of the busiest and most important thoroughfares in the East Coast? Nobody was asking any questions. Now it's back in the news with more questions than answers. Speaking of stories with more questions than answers, Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe delivered these statements late last week regarding the first attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Here he is.
The findings of the Mission Assurance Review have prompted the Secret Service to move into the accountability phase of this process. The Office of Professional Responsibility and the Office of Integrity are reviewing the findings. And as a result of these failures, what has become clear to me is we need a shift in paradigm in how we conduct our protective operations. As was demonstrated on Sunday in West Palm Beach, the threat level is evolving and requires this paradigm shift.
So that is Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe saying a lot of words, but really communicating very little. Again, are we ever going to have answers to any of the questions regarding how Thomas Matthew Crooks was able to get off shots at Donald Trump? I don't think so. And Richard Blumenthal, he was back out there again last week. He's involved in this committee, this bipartisan committee, congressional committee investigating this. He said that the Department of Homeland Security is straight up stonewalling their efforts to find answers. Again, that's a Democrat in Richard Blumenthal saying that. I'm, again, not optimistic that we'll ever receive any answers. And finally, talk show host Jesse Kelly joined Tucker Carlson's speaking tour and delivered these comments about GOP primary voters or their lack thereof. I would submit to you, this is going to be the most important 2.5 minutes you'll maybe hear all year, and explains a lot about the state of right-wing America.
But we have a primary voter problem because the reddest states, they are sending the most putrid losers to Washington, D.C. John Thune, John Cornyn, Mitch McConnell, James Lankford, Naked Ken Doll Lankford out of Oklahoma. These people are from our reddest states.
Wait, what did you call him?
Naked Ken Doll. Have you ever seen a Naked Ken Doll? There's nothing there.
So, no, I'm not bragging. I've never taken off Ken's pants, but it's just...
Well, believe me, that's what you're going to find if you ever disrobe James. But the point
I'm
is...
stealing that.
The point is, we have this red state, And because it is red, look, I moved here on purpose. My wife and I, we had 2 kids. I moved here without a job because I love Texas people so much, because that's what we do. But that niceness can also burn us as well, because you move to a safe place. I'm in a neighborhood without crime. I'm in a state that's Republican. I have this, I have that. And you think to yourself, we're fine. We're not fine. The demons come for what is good. What is good. It's not an accident. If you've ever sat at home and you watched any of this child tranny stuff or anything like that before, and if you ever said something to yourself like, why the kids? Why can't they just leave the kids alone? People love saying that on the right. I don't understand why they can't leave the kids alone. The kids are where they went first, because the kids are the most good, because the kids are the most innocent. They're not going to come after me. I'm a horrible human being. The kids are the most innocent, and so that's why they went after them. Whatever is good, whatever is right, that's what the devil goes after first. And if you think your state of Texas is safe, it's the most unsafe, because these people look at you and your family and your values and your guns, and it's a reminder of everything they're not, and it's a reminder of everything that can stop them. So we're not safe, and we have to start getting more involved locally and in primaries. It is a disgrace that John Cornyn is a senator from this state. That should never happen again. Disgrace.
So that is talk show host Jesse Kelly joining another talk show host, Tucker Carlson, speaking to her. That is the most important 2.5 minutes I think you will hear this year. It's instructive about a lot of things, a lot of phenomenon we see on the right. Because it's not really a political assessment that Jesse Kelly is giving there. It's a spiritual assessment. The devil comes for that which is good, true, and beautiful. That's why they always target the kids. And so this sense of complacency, that we live in a red state, we live in a red community, we live red this, and that. It's that complacency that is killing us. And that's why that's the most important 2.5 minutes you'll probably hear this year. That'll do it for Monday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.